If you guys came into dentistry, you would feel about 20 years behind. And that's not due to the dentists. That's just due to the lack of innovation. And then they generally are slower decision makers or slower adopters. And so they're very tentative on changing core things to their business that they're not formally trained on. And so things have evolved, but there are still some gaping holes in the market that have yet to be filled that I would have thought would have been innovated and solved years ago.
Welcome to WorkNow's Humans of Staffing podcast. My name is Sammy Singh, along with my host, TJ Sammy.
Hi, my name is TJ Sammy, the co-founder of WorkNow.
WorkNow is a leading provider of software for the staffing industry.
Being in the industry for the last 30 years,
Not only have we run staffing agencies, but we've been in software in the staffing business for the past 20 to 25 years.
our focus is, in addition to other aspects of the staffing industry, will be on how emerging technology is impacting the staffing industry.
What we want to learn from this podcast, if you're interested, is how do recruiters do their jobs? What can they do that you can learn from?
How our guests are overcoming those challenges and the opportunities they'll see in the future.
The owners, what challenges do they face? As well as the temps that work in this business and what do they need for this industry to thrive. So the goal of this podcast is learn and understand where it's going, where it's been, and hopefully you get some value out of this podcast. Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Humans of Staffing. Today we are speaking with Cory Pinegar, founder of Teem. Cory, thanks for chatting with us today.
Thanks for having me on, gents.
Welcome.
Cory, I hope I said your name correctly. That's number one.
You actually got it right. Most of the time people call me Cory Pinegar. But
Okay, got it. So this worked out good. Great. Thank you so much for being here. So Cory, yours is a very interesting, you're a young man. Well, obviously we have all just briefly met, and it's so good to have you here because it gives us a very, new perspective on a young man's standpoint. I look at it that way because you're very young. You've already been on this, you've been on two major rodeos already. So kind of tell us what your journey, where you are today, and what has been your journey in the staffing industry so far.
I think we all got here by chance, or, for me, I fell into the world. And to kind of give a little bit of the story on how I got where I'm at today, which has been incredibly fortunate, is I was a student at Brigham Young University. And my aunt was living about 20 miles up the road in Lehi, Utah. She called me one day. She was the EA for a CEO of a, newly formed startup. And she said, "Hey, we have this closet. If you ever want to come clean it out, we'll pay you $500. To me, that's like the best damn deal. I've been doing that for my mom for years for free. And so started working just, on a project basis for a company called Weave. They're publicly traded today, and eventually started working part-time at Weave. And it was like November of 2016, the company was burning an enormous amount of money. And they had a little offshoot part of their business called Recall Solutions. And Weave is a tech company and VoIP company for dental practices. And they've really branched into private practice and brick and mortar healthcare beyond that today. They got told by their investors that if you don't chop 40% of your headcount to reduce your burn rate, we're going to can you guys, the two founders. And so my business partner at Reach and I got approached by the two founders saying, "Hey, we've got to get rid of this thing, and we probably could sell it. We don't have the time to sell it." And frankly, it was a small service-based asset. It was doing $250,000 a year in revenue at that point. It had 30 to 40 customers on a good day. And so they offered for us to buy it for $1. No strings attached. It was profitable. And you look back at like getting a $250,000 annual business for $1 that was profitable in a free office space for the first couple months and some really great mentorship. It's a hell of a deal that is kind of like a bird falling out of the sky and hitting you right in the head. That was my start into the service and staffing world, where we started to help dental practices with missed phone calls. and other outbound phone calls that their typical staff could not do. And so then over the last 8 years, 8.5 years, it's just continued to grow and evolve. And it's a really fun cycle where, you're trying to win more wars than you lose.
And there were no terms attached, nothing. It was almost like $1. Here you go.
It was $1 for the pure use of like a formal business agreement. Like we had
Wow.
attorney draft up an asset purchase agreement where we took the rights to the name. They gave us computers. They allowed us to continue to operate out of their office space for a few months. I mean, it was a damn good deal. And Jared and Brandon Rodman, who exited Weave and now run another company called Prevy, are just some of the best individuals. Because most people are like, you got a business for $1 and they don't have like a 10% nut on when you split in the future. Like there truly is or was no strings attached, which shows to their kindness, which is really fortunate.
They were bigger than that, right? That's what I think. Yeah, they were bigger than that. They just thought, okay, here's somebody who could take this platform and run with it.
And I think they were so backed into a wall where they needed to cut. I mean, you think about trying to sell a $250,000 business. What are you going to sell it for? 100 grand, 150, like on a good day. And having your attorneys draft real paperwork around that, wasting your time. I mean, they have tens of billions of dollars of capital. At that point, it was quicker just to say either we're going to shut it down or can we just, even less painful than shutting it down. I think it was easier like, well, here's 2 college guys that we hope do a really good job with it. And we're going to get it to them. And I think it was the quickest way to get that asset and that amount of employees off their hands.
I think you're absolutely right. It wasn't worth their time to go through that legal and so forth. It's only $250,000, right? And I think it also speaks, I mean, it's a testament of your ability too, right? I mean, if we had a couple of guys in our company and then if we had to offload an asset, I would do it to somebody who I trust can take it to the next level, right? I mean, that's what's happened here, right? I wouldn't just give it off to any Joe Schmo off the street, right? So it says a lot that these folks had that trust to a certain extent, and of course, right place, right time to be there to get that opportunity as well. And then you guys took it.
Yeah. You look at those first couple of years, I was 22, 31 today, but 22 when we initially bought the business, and we, had a scratch piece of paper like this. It was smaller. It was like a thicker cardboard. And I sat down with Casey at his house one night and we wrote out an initial business plan in Sharpie on probably an 8x5 piece of paper. And we thought the business within a year would be cash flowing millions of dollars and we would have the best possible company out there. Obviously, it was not that case for the first couple of years, but it really has been a very enjoyable journey full of a lot of learning so far.
And that business still exists today, Cory? That is the one that does exist, right? And are you fully still involved in it, or have you? What's the stage today? So, what's the stage today? And then also going back, pick one of the toughest days you ever had to deal in that business. Pick a day that you could tell us a story on, because stories is what everybody loves.
Business still exists today. We serve a couple thousand dental practices, have a couple hundred team members. It's been really fascinating. I mean, I think the tough days evolve. I look at those very early days, and we had a larger customer. He was spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month, which was an unusually high percentage of our revenue right when we got started. And he was a tough bill to collect. He was a gristly dentist out of Baltimore, Maryland. And he would always kind of claw back, and then he would only give you his credit card when he's ready. And there were days where payroll was tomorrow. And if you didn't collect that money in those first couple months, like the business did not exist. And so I look at those periods. I look at today as where, things happen, but the business can survive a little bit more of the up and down. We sat on a cliff where if the next day didn't happen, what are we going to go to our team members and say, hey, we can't pay you? We were 22-year-old college students at the point. It wasn't like we had these coffers to go dig into. And if I went to my dad and even had asked him about that, he would have been like, you bought the business, you figure it out, suck it up.
So true, Cory. What was your major in college?
I dropped out after buying the business. I am an economics almost degree. So I'm 15 and a half credit hours left at BYU to graduate.
So whatever you learned has been, in the real world, which is your real MBA, as they say. This is the real MBA that you could probably teach a thing or two to a class, because this is the real world. So that transition took place. What was there a partner also? You said there were two college students. Was it you and a partner that did this?
Yeah. So I was a project manager for the CEO and COO at Weave at the time. Project manager is very glorious term, by the way. I just did whatever they needed. If we needed new TVs from Costco, I got them. If we needed the company holiday party set up, there was a point where they had me charging people to use the orange juice machine when money wasn't coming in great. So from board decks to charging people from the orange juice machine, but it was really informative. And then the guy I partnered with was actually running that team of the recall solutions employee at the time. And we were the exact same age. So we had both, worked at the company for, I think, 6 months at that point, and then both got the opportunity to split the business down in the middle. And, being naive enough, it seemed like a great idea, and we jumped in.
And till this day, is it still the same team, as you say? The core team is the same?
Casey's no longer involved in day-to-day.
Okay.
Over the years, the business has evolved tremendously. There's still some of our very early core players and core customers, but where we started as a business is wildly different than the way we deliver our services today.
Cory, one thing that's always curious, because we all have our ICPs, right? At the end of the day, we know, at least TJ and I have been at this, 25, 30 years, built software for a long time and sold it to our ICP, which is anybody in the staffing industry. Typically, it's light industrial staffing. And we know the exact habits. We know their motivations. We know where we're going to fall apart, where we're not. We can sniff it way up front. What would you say that surprised you about the dental industry, your client base, and what has changed in that industry that is better today or for worse, whatever it might be? First question is, what is it about them that you feel that surprised you about the dental practices? And then now that you've seen it all, what was better and what things were worse than what you had anticipated it to be?
Dentists are really interesting customers to sell to. Obviously, they're very book smart and they're scientists or more engineers by traditional trade. And so what I'm digging at there is they're really bad business people. And you will run into the occasional well-run business of a dental practice, but most of them are scientists. And in your 4 years of dental school, you are given a total accumulation of about 2 weeks of business knowledge training. And so dentists don't know a lot about the decisions, and there's not a lot of visible data in dental practices to help them make smarter decisions. And then the second thing that I would say is they make very emotional decisions because there's not great data and because there's not great processes and systems within these practices. They walk out. If you think about a dentist, you are typically the owner of your own business. But then from 8 a.m. in the morning till 5 p.m. at night, you are the head clinician. And then outside of those typical hours is where you're the CEO or owner of your group. And so you're walking out for the day and a staff member will say, hey, we bought this software. It sucks. And so if you are the owner of a company on the way home, you're going to get a call from that dentist saying, your software sucks. We want to cancel. And then you dig into it and there's really not as much factual information behind that. Now, once you really learn how to solve their emotional pressure that they feel, you can drive a really great relationship. But it is not the typical B2B sales cycle.
Dental practices, at least what we've realized is it is a lot of outbound sales. I mean, it is really aggressive. You can call 4 practices and say, I need to get, a tooth pulled out or, root canal. You're going to get some pricing. I mean, you're going to get pricing. They're going to get aggressive. They're going to give you. So that's how we perceive it from outside the industry. Is that something you've seen it evolve over the years with software and marketing with folks like you coming into it, kind of teaching them that this is kind of where the business should be? Because that's my perception from the outside.
It's getting better. If you guys came into dentistry, you would feel about 20 years behind. And that's not due to the dentists. That's just due to the lack of innovation. And then they generally are slower decision makers or slower adopters. And so they're very tentative on changing core things to their business that they're not formally trained on. And so things have evolved, but there are still some gaping holes in the market that have yet to be filled that I would have thought would have been innovated and solved years ago.
Can you point them out?
Yeah, this is a great one. So in all of private practice healthcare, they typically revolve around an EHR. In dentistry, to be very specific, it is called a practice management software. What's interesting is you guys use Salesforce or HubSpot or some larger CRM where you see from the moment someone goes to your website and you know the reason that they cancel, and you see everything in between that. In healthcare, you only become or go into their version of Salesforce or HubSpot when you become a patient of record. And so there is a black hole of information up until then. Let's just take an example of that. You want to get implants done, and those are typically $40,000 to $60,000 worth of work or revenue that would be generated. So you're going to call, you're going to talk to Susie, you're going to say, great, I'm going to chat with my partner, let me get back to you. There's no lead follow-up on that. There's no marking where the deal is. They're just waiting for you to call back because there is no system that is built around lead management, because everything in the world of healthcare starts the moment a patient says yes to schedule their appointment. Number two is how broken the insurance world is. You would think with how accessible information is today that you would be able to, as a dental practice or a private practice clinic, be able to go online and verify that you're eligible for your insurance, how much of your deductible is remaining. A vast majority of that is still done with manual phone calls to a real representative. And so practices are losing anywhere from 15 to 30 hours a week calling insurance companies to verify eligibility in patients.
Wow. So those are two of the core points. And has there been any particular software or anything that's come into that industry that has really shaken the tree or really changed, just like Amazon changed, retail? Has there been any software that's actually made a big difference?
There's minor improvements. There's online scheduling, there's text to pay, there's the Weaves of the world that have done a better job. And there is a data management company that lets you assess where you're losing your opportunities or leaving things behind. But they're pulling, again, from the practice management software. Since there's no visibility on that front line before someone becomes patient of record, it's still not completely solved yet. We've probably seen over $500 million of investment into insurance verifications into different companies over the last 5 years, and it is still not solved today. The reason that it's not solved isn't because there's not money being put on the line, but the insurance companies have every reason in the world to make that information more difficult to access because it increases the likelihood that they can deny claims. So until the insurance companies want to play ball in a fair way, like you are scraping everything that you can, but it is a battle. And as soon as they update their API or change how you can scrape information, you're going back to that initial stage. And so there's certain things that are hard wars to win because insurance companies are the behemoths of the companies in the industries.
And I think these challenges you're mentioning, Cory, are very typical to small business owners, right? I mean, so I look at these dental practices as sole proprietorships, right? Yeah, you might have a LLC or a C corp that owns the entity, but like you mentioned, if I am the practitioner, I'm responsible for all the procedures that happen throughout the day. I might have a couple of other dentists working for me. But at the end of the day, I don't really have time for operations, for sales, for marketing, for data, as you said, those analytics to make those decisions. I really don't. I just listen to my staff. If my staff is complaining about X, I'm going to jump on the phone and just say, hey, go fix this, right? it's very typical to a small business owner who's running through that scenario. What, at least on an outside perspective, what I've seen is private equity has come in now, right? And prior to private equity coming in, folks like you have that, the call business, for example, that is where opportunities arose for businesses like that to come in and approach a dental practice and say, hey, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the time, you're losing all this opportunity. Let us help you kind of reclaim that opportunity, right? I mean, this is where the add-on services come in and augment that business function that you cannot perform, right? So you had mentioned, I look at it at top of the funnel, which is I'm waiting for a patient to call in, but if a patient called in and said, let me go talk to my partner, nobody's doing the follow-ups, nobody's saying, and nobody's doing that whole lead management, if you will. That's where opportunities like companies, start, because you're trying to fill that gap that a typical business owner, and rightfully so, cannot do. You can't be expert at everything, right? And so businesses, and hence but I think private equity has come in. I'm noticing more and more, at least we're based in California, they've become very aggressive. I get calls and very professional, and then the rates have gone up just because private equity is coming. They've standardized process, standardized rates. The outbound reach is at a different level. But I'm sure throughout the country there might be different segments that are performing at a different level, right? So
when I joined or started working in dentistry 8 years ago, a little less than 10% of the market was PE owned. Today, it's above a quarter. It was projected that we would actually be above 35%, but with where interest rates have gone during and after COVID, while debt was cheap, it was every day practices were getting acquired. But it's really taken a heavy slowdown because it is harder to make the mechanics work with the cost of debt. You look at a profitable dental practice on a well-run machine, you're going to produce 10% profit if you're good, outside typical doctor pay. And so as soon as your interest rate, your cost of debt changes, it's much harder and much a more, I would consider, a risky endeavor to go out there and spend a ton of capital. Because then if you get it wrong, I mean, we have had two, larger, not large, but mid-market DSOs, which are private equity roll-ups, go bankrupt in the last 12 months because their cost of debt has ballooned and they operationally were not efficient enough to survive.
Wow. Is it that there are too many dentists? Do you think there's too big a competition, or are they not charging enough? I mean, something somewhere is broken, right?
So the fees are not really set by dentists. The fees are more set by insurance. If you take insurance, Delta Dental is going to come to you and they're going to say, if you want to take Delta Dental, then we're going to pay you X amount to do a cleaning, and we're going to pay you X amount for a root canal and X amount for an implant. And you're taking a pretty substantial write-off to play in those games. And you can go back and fight a little bit, but there's not as much budge as you think. Where practices lose is a well-run operation where, you could be a great craftsmanship, but are you doing your follow-up? Are you giving your patients great experiences? People, and I hate to say it, rarely know if they got good dental work. Beyond, okay, I can see that my tooth looks really good. You don't know that your cavity was filled the right way, but you came in, they had a coffee maker for you, your appointment started on time, you got a really nice toothbrush when you walked out the door, the doctor called you the next day to say, hey, how are you feeling? All of those things. And a well-run, scaled engine is the differentiator that makes these practices wildly successful, because there are solo dentists that we work for with just hygienists and team members that take home multi-million-dollar individual paychecks a year. And then there's some that are barely scratching the six-figure mark. And keep in mind, these guys and gals have $300,000 to $500,000 of student debt that they've got to start paying back the day they graduate from school.
And on top of that, the equipment's very expensive. A lot of it is leased and purchased. It's not cheap to put a practice up.
Oh, and so then and then the building that you're in, you've got to run a vacuum system under it. You've got to run a watering system under it. Your IT has to be HIPAA compliant. Like, these are not cheap operations. And so if you're not operating in a good way, it's very hard to make it.
Which state is the most busiest for you? Which state has, so in all of these businesses, which is the one state or two states that really thrive, that do well, are busy, and it seems to be doing well?
Where we get business from is California, Texas, Florida, and then those upper East Coast states. And the reason that we consistently are getting calls there is your cost of labor and your taxes and regulations are much higher. And then if you look at Texas, since our virtual teams are based predominantly in Latin America, we're able to get Spanish and English speakers quite easy. And so in California, in Texas, where you need that bilingual speaker, and you just can't either afford to do it or can't find the reliable staff to do it, is why we get pretty consistent calls from those areas.
Makes sense.
So that gives us a perfect foray into Teem. So talk to us about Teem. Firstly, what made you do it, and where you at today, and what is it? What's the journey like?
So Teem was born out of a genesis, or out of a problem that we experienced at Reach. We had our office in Lehi, Utah, in the early 2021 timeframe when COVID was doing real well at making everything miserable to run. And we were probably turning over on a typical month, either from not being able to compete wage-wise, because everything was just going through the roof at that point, and everyone was wanting to work remote. We were probably turning over 20 people a month. And keep in mind, dentistry, you need to intimately know these practice management softwares. And you need to also know all of the it's not a call center role or a customer service role that you can learn in 2 to 4 weeks and be expert level at. And so we made the decision to go hire a person. There are 2 people out of Brazil and Argentina to get some lower cost help, and also to see if we could get some of that Spanish help. The 2 people's names that we hired were Daniel and Vinicius. They're still with us today. And what I realized from those 2 people, and I had never worked with anyone international prior to that, is I realized that there is amazing people all around the world. And you get the cost effectiveness, but more so you get someone who is really reliable, who gives a damn. And we struggled with our $15 to $20 an hour pay rates within Utah to find those type of people. And so when we radically transformed our business at Reach, I realized, okay, you have your T-Mobiles and your Apples and your other large institutions who can hire or outsource internationally and have for years. The small business doesn't really get access to amazing labor globally, typically. And so Teem was founded on the idea of, let's be the bridge that takes businesses in the United States who need to get that help, and people around the world who are amazing English speakers and craving something bigger and better pay, and connect those 2.
Is this for a specific vertical, specific skill set, or who would your ideal customer be?
So when we started like, it started as, okay, if this worked so well for us at Reach, why not just go out there and offer? And I think I posted on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I think, from the first 3 months, we probably hired 100 people just from my network. And that was like at the apex peak of people legitimately could not hire, even if you begged someone on the street to come work with you. And so to start, there really was no ICP. It was just like, hey, if you need help, we're going to do it. Whether you're a marketing company or you run a pool cleaning business and need someone to pick up your phones, we're willing to do it. Over the years, when we were like, okay, we really want to start growing the business now, realized that we did not have a great ICP, and you can't, if you want to market to everyone, you're going to market. And so I read Peter Thiel's book that talks about pick a micro niche and monopolize it. And I had spent my whole career in dental. And so I was like, well, what's something similar that we could jump Teem into? And so we started going into optometry, and then we jumped into veterinary after that. And we're 3.5 years old now, and we've filled 2,500 plus roles since we started.
So how does the model work? Is it direct hire, or is it hourly? And if that's the case, Are you the employer of record or who's the employer of record there?
We're the employer of record,
Okay.
countries that we operate out of. And they either hire for a part-time or a full-time role, where we go source the right people. They do the final interviews, and then we maintain them on our payroll and have, a success manager who's checking in with the client, checking in with the team member to make sure it works long-term. But we are a perpetual part of the relationship to make, because they're that small business, they're not going to want to Venmo someone in Brazil,
Right.
or house someone. And so we help you find the right people and then make that compliance portion easier going forward.
Got it. So you're invoicing the end client here in the US, and your entity, and I'm just saying, let's say Argentina, is the actual employer of record for your employee, and that employee's payroll and everything else, as far as compliance in Argentina is concerned, you're taking care of all of that, right?
Yes.
Got it. What's been the biggest challenge for you there? Is it recruiting locally? Is it the cultural? Because there's a cultural component involved, right? I mean, offshoring is offshoring, right? Where's been the main challenge for you there?
I think our main challenge very early on was finding the right ICP. So it was actually more acquisition of new customers.
Okay.
We work hard to pay people well relative to where they live.
Got it.
So we typically have been able to find good people. Now, understanding the culture of the Philippines versus Argentina versus Brazil has been really, really important. But just to give an example, I think we hired 97 new people last month. It took 16,840-ish total inbound applications. So I think we hired about 0.4% of all of the people who applied, and they're going through we're checking all of their stuff to even go through that process, which includes written and vocal skills and a background check. And so there are a plethora of people. Now, finding the really good ones through that is still difficult, but I think we have struggled more on the go-to-market side than we have on the recruiting side.
So you've got a pretty mature model down as far as pre-vetting is concerned on the resources side, right? That's because that's the one challenge, right? Local resources, pre-vetting them, then going through the process, communication skill and so forth. And then once they're on board, training them. And then a lot of these countries have like a 90-day, you've got to keep an employee on board for 90 days. And then if you terminate them, it's all that, you got to build that into your cost factor no matter what you do. So you're saying the main challenge has been on the flip side, which is, reaching out to an ideal customer, and then what should that go-to-market strategy be like for you guys?
As I mentioned earlier on, private practice healthcare is a risk-averse business. So we know that they need the help, but how do we catch them in a way where they're like, okay, this is interesting and I'm willing to engage in the conversation to learn. I mean, if you look at total number of optometrists in the United States, you've got 35 to 40,000. And so there's a ton of them there, but to find them and then to find the ones who are even in that frame of mind and to develop some of the crowd effort, they are a herd-based mentality where if a lot of people are starting to do that, the herd follows. But how do you organically but intentionally create that herd-like movement? We're at 3% market penetration over the last 24 months, and we'll continue to grow that, but getting started. And then we recently, less than that, got started in that really organic but intentional creation of those early movements is difficult because this is a brand new idea to them. They are used to the idea of, I hired Sammy. Sammy's going to sit next to me in my desk today and watch exactly what I do. I'm going to pick up the phone. He's going to listen. We're going to schedule. But because they're they're struggling, just like I did at Reach, they're willing to engage in those conversations. But how do you catch them at the right time when they're even willing to discuss that?
And I think messaging is the key there, right? The messaging is where the tough part is. Usually, even what we discover is how do you convince someone? And then you said it, right on the money here, is where you've got 35, 40,000 of them, but how many of them actually have the mindset of that even open to that discussion, right? At the end of the day, we dealt with it when we first launched our company. I remember 2002, and we were one of the first ones to have a truly web-based product out there in the market. And we would go up to prospects and they're like, well, where's the CD? Where does my, send us the CD to install the software. And, what do you mean our data is not on the, I don't have a server sitting or in my back room or closet here. We struggle with that education. Now it's a different ballgame 20 years later. But then, and even at that point, we realized it's that top 15, 20% of those businesses who had the ideology of who were the forward-thinking individuals made that decision. They're like, yeah, I read about this. Yep, this is where the future is. You mean I don't need a CD? You mean I don't need to worry about backup of my data and some server maintenance? You guys are doing everything. Yep, we get it. But it took time. It took us time, a good 3 to 5 years before the entire industry of folks like Amazon came out with AWS, Microsoft came out with Azure. All these guys started pouring money into the market to change that mindset of the entire population. That's when you have to be ideally positioned to say, I don't have the marketing dollars to convince every one of these 40,000, but if the entire industry pours money into it, then my transition into getting to that sale becomes much easier.
Cory, how do you deal with, and I'm assuming these are the challenges. So first, you have to convince them that they need talent that's outside. So no one physically showing up, right? Big challenge. Number two, what type of systems do they need to do this? Because I'm a sole proprietor. I may have 1 or 2 people in my office. Is it typically somebody doing the billing for them and the outreach? Are there any type of technology you're using that makes their life easy so that they don't have to spend so much time of managing these individuals and doing any type of matrices or tracking, their performance?
Obviously, they need some, basic infrastructure like a VoIP system. We, can't take their 25-year-old Comcast, hardline phones and get those down to Argentina. And so there's some basic technology, but just as TJ talked about a second ago, there's been some really good movement over the last 5 to 10 years where most people we talk to, and because we talk to that early 15 to 20% of early adopters, they're usually there with the tech that we need. Something that I deeply believe as an entrepreneur is the reason businesses succeed is they solve real problems. And I think TJ kind of alluded to that earlier. Is there a gap and how do we go in there and solve it? And so what we talk about internally every single day is how do we provide more value to our customers and how do we make the value that is being provided more clear? And so they have the ability to log into a dashboard where they can see how many phone calls were picked up, how many new patients were scheduled, how many existing patients were scheduled, how many insurances were verified. And so instead of being like, because you think about the typical front desk, if you have Betty, and every time you walk past, she's on the phone. If I then say, hey, Sammy, how's Betty? You'd be like, she's great. She's always busy. But because if we go back to what we talked about very early on, there is no data visibility on most things that actually take place on the front desk. It's more based on busyness than actual value. When I look at one of our sales reps, it's not, wow, their Google Calendar was really full. It was, here's how much they have in the pipeline, and here's how much they closed. And it's a very easy decision on who is good, who is great, and who is struggling. The private practice part of the world does not have that. And so the goal of our portal is then for someone to be able to log in daily, weekly, monthly, and see the value in such a damning way that they're like, holy smokes, they scheduled 88 new patients this month. And that makes the job easier for the team member because when we come in, they're then setting expectations on, well, how many phone calls do you typically want your team member to pick up a day? How many new patients would be in that range? And then that value is shown not only to make it easier for the team member to showcase their value instead of just looking busy, but then we also believe it differentiates us from the front because they don't even have that type of visibility into their front desk team members.
That's a very good point, Cory, because if you don't have any data, how are you going to measure it? And typically, in your case, they will take the time when they're paying somebody on the outside. They need to see, suddenly they want to know data. They want to know what happened, what didn't happen. And no matter what, you have to present the tools to justify that, right? Because to them, every time they get slow, what's the first one you're going to let go?
Any outside person.
Any outside person. That's your number one thing you're going to do. Let's cut, guys. Let's go without looking at if there's data that's visible. Maybe then you may say, hey, my internal staff, maybe then I can do a 20% cut because at least my clients are being handled by this team that's on the outside.
Something else this allows us to do is we talked about how there's often emotional decisions made. Well, let's say we get a call from one of these doctors driving home one day and they say, I'm not sure Cory's doing anything. It says, okay, great. Let's schedule a meeting tomorrow and let's look through the performance tracker versus your expectations. And then we can go into that meeting and let's say someone is at 50% of where they should be. It's pretty damning that there is a problem that we should fix. But then they could walk in and say, hey, the goal was 50 scheduled appointments and we've done 120. It's okay, there's misinformation taking place and the data allows for a really clear and fair decision. Every year, every 6 months, we also go out there and work for raises for individual team members. And this data allows it to become very clear on, hey, if you're hitting these things, we can go to bat and make it super easy, which drives better incentive to deliver amazing service with the clients we serve.
So is part of your service, Cory, also implementing some sort of standardized software that gathers all this data, it kind of so that you have access to that? Is that part of the service that, hey, step one, install our software, it integrates with whatever current system you have, and then step two, step three, is that, or is that completely independent? We don't care what software you're on.
We have our own software that all of our team members are trained on. It's independent of their systems, but it pulls out the data needs, and then there's inputs from our team member for us to get to these simplistic values that we believe are essential for practice owners.
How, or if to a certain extent, is AI playing a role for you today? Are you using it? Are you thinking about using it in these areas?
I mean, AI is changing the world and will continue to change the world, and it will change us in multiple ways. Eventually, AI could and should help with solving the insurance verification problem. Maybe if insurance companies don't want to play ball in providing that data, well, what if you had an outbound agent that actually collected that information and populated it into the EHR or practice management software? And so we do believe that externally, AI almost seems to be a competitor of ours. I look at it probably a little different, where I think AI is either the wave that we can catch and ride all the way in, or we can have the wave land on top of us and we can be screwed. And so I think there's two main plays for us. I look at AI as a sewing machine. Back in the day, during the Industrial Revolution, where a sewing machine came out for the first time, it obviously made people way more effective and efficient at their jobs. So if we can take really good industry-specific AI and take reliable, engaged team members and put those two together, you're going to just have a way better value-based team member where their output is 3 or 4x what a traditional person could be. And though that may eat at some of our headcount market share, I think it's a way that we can greater serve a larger population. So I think that's essential for us to do. The second thing is, I'm sure both of you are familiar with buy now, pay later company Klarna. Did you see, it was probably like, I don't know, 15 months ago, 18 months ago, they came out and they said, we're dropping Salesforce, we're cutting 700 from our workforce. We have this AI that is unbeatable. Did you see their release a couple weeks ago?
No.
They're retreating on a lot of their initial AI thoughts and findings. And AI, I think, is essential. But what their CEO came out and said we got wrong is people's desire for real human connection. And so again, where I think we can play is not only at the accelerator and delivery of those AI-based services, but then the second thing is I still think, especially in healthcare, where you have someone in your mouth or someone looking at your eyes or someone who is intimately involved with you and you've got a problem, you want to talk to a real human being right now. And so I think both of those realities well played together, even though they're going to continue to evolve, allows us to be in a really strong position where instead of us versus them, we're partnering together and delivering. The two of them actually make four instead of two.
I'm really glad that you've recognized the threat of AI on your business. So I'll give you a quick synopsis on my experience. So I started in offshoring or slash outsourcing in '99. So initially, the reason for outsourcing, right, when we did it in software and tech and so forth, was cost, right? Hey, 1/3 of the cost, and it was for those tasks that were mainly data entry, like the just transcription was one, data entry, customer service. But fast forward 25 years, we've personally worked with, offshoring facilities from India to Philippines to Croatia to Australia. I've been doing this my whole career. In fact, I was in Costa Rica last year doing it. One thing, the trend, right? It's a cycle, right? So then by 2010, 2015, companies realized in the US that there's more than just outsourcing, more than just cost saving, right? It's the availability of technical labor. It's also the expertise now that I might not easily be available to me here in the US. Let me go get it there, right? And now obviously the costs have gone. It's no longer 1/3. It's probably around 60% of what the costs are in the US. Now we're seeing a trend, the flip side, which is AI has come, right? Now AI has come in and AI said, look, all the non-value added tasks, any admin task that's repetitive, if AI can do it, why do I need a human being? And I agree with you, certain areas you need a human touch, don't get me wrong. But the voice AI, for example, these days, when we looked at it 5 years ago, it was not even close. This day and age, voice AI for basic scheduling is so darn advanced, it's mind-blowing. And what's changed is that the folks that you're calling out to, the demographic, the next generation that's coming in is fine with not being a human being calling them for scheduling, not telling me how my dental work went, because I wouldn't trust an AI for that. But if you're telling me my appointment has changed or confirming, that's a task that I'm okay, fine with the AI asking me that question because it's not going to kill me, right? So outsourcing companies now, I think their biggest threat is AI. If outsourcing companies don't incorporate AI ASAP in their business model, in 3 to 5 years, they'll be in big trouble, because either that or your customer is going to start using 3 years, 4 years from now, when that agent, so to speak, that AI agent is mature, is mature enough to make those decisions. But where AI, frankly, in your business can be used today is the example you gave, which was, the dentist calling you and saying, hey, Cory, I don't know if my sales guy is working or not. I don't know if it's, whatever, my customer service rep. AI should be and is already, and that's what it was originally, meant for, should be looking at the data. That's why I asked where your data is, because data is king at the end of the day. If you have control over your data, your AI should be sitting there already. Services out there, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, that should be looking at the trends and informing you, Cory, and informing your customer that we already seen these trends. You need to attack it before you realize it, or patients realize it, or whoever realizes it. That proactive analysis of modeling is already there. And it's much easier today than it ever was when we tried to do it 5, 7 years ago. So I would strongly encourage you, that's one area you can implement in your business today with exceptional value to you and your customer, and with minimal investment today.
Agreed.
And going back to that ICP, right? I'm a dentist. And if an AI agent's able to give me my data and the things that are critical to me on a daily or a weekly basis, it'll alleviate a lot of the pain. And again, when people want to talk to someone, they should never have a barrier to be able to talk to someone. I just don't think that can ever be replaced. But that should be a choice, not something that forced upon you, that no matter what, you got to deal with this. Recently I was calling someone, I think it was waste management. For the life of me, I could not get through the AI in order to talk to someone, because it was a little bit of an exception to what I needed versus what they were offering, right? To pick up, because there was an issue. There's no way. When your service is such a great add on to that, hey, AI will give you this, nobody minds getting texted, scheduling, maybe delivering my reports to me, all of that. Nobody minds it. But when it comes to people, I don't think in the staffing business, because we live in this world, this is our world, that it's ever going to go away. As a matter of fact, there will come a time where people will completely eliminate anything else and want to do everything one-on-one. And those services, it's a service, right? It's going to pop up again with a value saying, hey, now we'll charge you twice as much if you want a real human being to do this for you. And people will pay. It'll be a premium service at that point. And that's what you all need to everybody needs to continue. But without AI, there's no survival. Next 5 years. But let's talk about on Teem. What's your ultimate goal on this, Cory?
Goal is to grow to 10,000 active team members. So for me, we're not private equity backed, we're not venture backed, and I want to solve real problems for our customers and provide great employment for our team members, knowing that the snowball effect is real. If we do great jobs for our customers, they refer us and they keep us around. And if we treat our team like human beings and pay them well, they stick around, they deliver better service, and they continue to refer more friends and family. For me, business is a sport. I love the game. I'm really passionate about it, and I want to play it in the most sustainable way possible. I think we've all seen over the last few years, there's a lot of these pump and dump type companies where things go boom and then they go bust. And for me, I think we have the right chance to create a sustainable environment for our customers where we're not doing finicky things for quarterly or yearly results. And we can also treat our team so that one day we can look back and we say, we really built something cool collectively between all of us. That's what I'm passionate about.
That's a great, even in work now, our North Star is anything we do, does it increase our customers? So our clients are staffing agencies. Did we help them increase their sales, or did we help them reduce their expenses by giving them efficiency? If it doesn't meet one of these criteria, there's a problem, because our ultimate goal is for our clients to do better. Just the way if you can provide great service so that practices can grow and thrive and protect them in some shape or form, it only makes their life better. And those margins are tight these days. They are just tight. And how are things at this time with this current business environment?
We have not seen any fundamental top of funnel changes yet. We see a lot of conversation, but in terms of inbound demand generation, conversion rates, number of net new sales coming in, we're not seeing any radical ups or downs. Healthcare is pretty steady, which is nice. That's why I love it. Like it's not retail where you're very season based. Like if your tooth hurts, you're going to the dentist today. You're not saying, oh, I'll wait till the December sale to take care of that one. And if they need staff, they need staff. And so our business has been pretty steady. The only thing that's being discussed is you look at optical. A lot of those frames are imported from Europe. A lot of the drills and hand pieces are imported from other parts of the world in dentistry. And so there is the discussions on a 5 to 10% operating cost perspective increase that people will be looking at. But to be very candid, I think that better plays into our story, where your United Healthcares are not going to come out and say, we heard tariffs are hitting you guys really hard. We're going to up your paychecks these months. It's only going to happen on your renegotiation period. So your ceiling is going to be pretty flat in terms of how much you make per appointment if we look back at historical reasons. But your floor of cost of equipment, cost of software, cost of staffing is only going to continue to rise and is more volatile now than ever. And so we have the ability to help them decrease that floor in one of these areas so that they can take home the money that they need, but also invest in the other areas of their business that they should be investing in.
No matter what, it does affect everybody indirectly, whether it may not be directly, right? It does. And we really have come to believe that offshoring is not ever going away, because talent is growing every part of the world. That's what the internet did. And, each one of those countries you can train. But again, it's a very painful process. TJ's done it he does it 10x more than I do. It's painful culture, making them understand what, when, where, how, when to show up on time, why timeliness is critical. There's just simple cues that need to be understood, trained, and then measured. And then continuous training is very, very important. So when someone says, oh, gee, you're going to get me somebody at 1/10 of the cost there, it's a pipe dream. It does cost to train, retain, maintain. And that's the key, that you do save some, but if everybody just understood that there's a cost involved to all of that, that it's well worth the value that's being created, because a well-trained individual will make a huge difference.
And the ability, when you find some of the people that are amazing global technical pieces of talent, they actually stick around. In the US, it is a bidding war.
Yeah.
You look at software talent, TJ probably plays in that world where, one day you've got a $500,000 package from Netflix and the day after NVIDIA's on your tail. When you find great people internationally and you treat them like a human and you give them the ability to grow themselves personally, professionally, and financially, you have some really loyal, consistent parts of your team. Every once in a while, I have the, ability and luckiness to go with our team to some of these trade shows. And I went 2 weekends ago to a large convention in Orlando, and I worked the booth for a couple hours. And the biggest thing that I heard talking to people is they want reliable team members. It wasn't, oh, I can save money. I want someone who's going to be a stable supporter in my organization. And when I think you do what we're talking about, right, you have someone who is loyal and a part of your sports team for years to come.
Excellent.
Great.
Yep.
We're right about on that hour. Anything, TJ, that you needed to, or Cory?
No, I'm good. I'm
Ask-
good. I learned so much, man.
Gosh, a whole new vertical, Cory. This has been very, very interesting.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the time, gents. It's been awesome.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got. But Cory, what could we expect from Teem in the next year? Anything new and interesting? And then how to find you?
Our goal is to continue to double down on our 4 pillars, which is hiring the best people, creating the best possible training and integration on both sides of the aisle, doubling down on that ability to provide great value and visibility, and then continuing to enable better AI with our workforces. And so I think our vision is really clearly called out on getting to 10,000 team members and doing it in a value-based way. And then the 4 pillars that we believe get us there are, again, what I just mentioned. And so it's just focus and execution. And ultimately, there's a lot of companies in the spaces that we operate in. The proof's in the pudding. And so that's why I think we've just got to get out there and execute.
Excellent. And how do we find you?
People can go to our website, which is www.hireteam.com, or people can email me at Cory@hireteam.com if they ever have any, questions, comments, or ideas. Love chatting with real people.
Yeah, they shouldn't just be reaching out to you every time they need, a dental work, but they should be dentists.
If they're coming to me for a root canal, they're in sore trouble.
But on the same token, kudos to you. Excellent website.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you've got your customer testimonials, the way you guys have done it, tells you that you've got a good team behind you. It's professional. It comes out. At least to where TJ and I looked at it even this morning again. It really comes out professional, to the point, clear. And again, kudos to you and your team to have put that together.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Cory, thank you so much again. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.